This episode sponsored by Stuart Arango Oral Surgery. Learn more at saoralsurgeons.com. And Kathy L. Wall State Farm Agency. Learn more at kathylwall.com. And hellonanny.com. Say hello, nanny, and goodbye to stress at hellonanny.com. Welcome to the Bubble Lounge. I'm Martha Jackson, and it is still summer and still a lot of fun going on out there, but it is about 4 weeks until school starts. So that means it's time for us to start getting our kids ready and getting back into the mental mind frame of going back to school and more structure and things like that. So I invited Lori Langston of HP, the program, to join us. She's an expert in education, and she has tutored hundreds of kids in the Park Cities. So today we're going to help parents of high schoolers get prepared for what's ahead. You are going to love this episode, so stay tuned. Finding an oral surgeon is hard enough for yourself, and when it comes to your kids, it can feel impossible. We suggest our friends at Stuart and Arango because from emergencies to wisdom teeth and everything in between, they have you covered. Stuart and Arango are board certified with MDs who specialize in full scope oral, facial, and implant surgeries for both children and adults. Not only is their office state of the art, they lead the industry with the most advanced techniques and procedures. And when it comes to safety, they are pediatric and adult advanced life support certified and use a 3-day local anesthesia, which keeps you comfortable while limiting the use of opioids. Best part is, they're conveniently located at Northwest Highway and Hillcrest Avenue. So if you want the best of Big D caliber oral care, come see the friendly staff at Stuart and Arango. To learn more about them or book your appointment, visit saoralsurgeons.com. That's saoralsurgeons.com. Lori, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, I'm so excited to be here.
Well, before we get started, can you give us some background on how you got into education and how HP, the program, came about?
I will. It's a pretty organic situation. Nothing really planned. My mom taught school, and then I taught school, and I taught for 12 years, and then I was just going to quit and stay home with my daughter, who was 3 at the time, and someone said, "Can you tutor?" And I thought, I think so. I teach math. I taught math. I know this pretty well. So we just started at my dining room table 18 years ago.
Oh, wow. Well, that is a great story.
Pretty exciting. And then it really just evolved from there. And as anyone may know, I've taken a lot of information off the backs of my 3 children.
Well, that's the best way to learn.
Yes, hands-on learning.
Well, we're about 4 weeks out before school starts. So although there's plenty of fun to still be had,
Indeed.
It is kind of time to start thinking about getting ready for back to school, which is why I invited you to join us today, is because I knew you'd be the perfect person to let parents know what they need to be doing.
Yes. So I think back to school prep can be critical for a lot of kids, especially in math, science, and reading. And I say that especially for my freshman parents. They may not realize that we probably have a quiz in the first 4 to 5 days.
Oh, wow. That is true. Yeah.
It really comes on fast. And a lot of freshman parents don't realize that if you do poorly on a quiz, you cannot retake quiz grades. You can retest test grades up to 70, but not quizzes.
Okay.
So when that quiz happens 4 to 5 days, boom, that's your GPA. You have started. So when you do back to school things, especially for math, you haven't been doing anything for a couple of months. Hopefully you've been relaxing. So there are some critical things that you can either learn or memorize that'll make that first few weeks a little more easy to swallow.
What is kind of the normal percentage of things that we kind of forget over the summer and need to catch back up on?
Well, depending on the topic, and I would say math is really critical. And
Sure.
I know math is my area of expertise, so sometimes I hit on that. But it seems like a lot of new information, and if you're doing history, they're telling you it's new to you. But the math is a pretty big loss if you're not keeping up with it. And I mean up to your multiplication facts.
Sure.
And people may not realize what a big play that has at the high school. And we don't really use calculators in the high school for our basic information. And we use it for graphing and stuff, but not just average multiplication facts. So there is a pretty great loss over the summer, and people are focusing on other things.
Yeah,
so I understand.
right. Well, what about with things like reading? For example, my son is telling me he does not have any summer reading that is required.
Oh,
Not sure that I believe that.
he does. He does. All of our freshmen are reading The Book Thief, which is a pretty
Yes.
long book.
I remember that.
Yes, I'm sure you have fond memories. But they all have summer reading, and they should be starting that now. I never recommend that they start that in May because they won't have it memorized. They won't be fresh on it. But 4 weeks out is a pretty good time to start. And I say to like eat the elephant, if you will, and see how many pages I have. If I read a chapter a day or just something manageable. Because I think that kids think, oh, they're trying to get through it and they're trying to maybe reading for enjoyment. But the reality is they will be tested over that.
Yeah, and that comes up pretty quickly too.
Super fast. Again, it really is like you get in there. And I think in so many schools, or what parents may remember, is we're going to kind of ease into this. Like we're going to just walk into the shallow end. And it's not that way.
Well, that's how it was when we were younger, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's the mindset so many of us parents have, and that's just not the case anymore.
It's not. It's like you're in the ocean and those waves are just hitting, and you're like, wait, I just started. This isn't right.
Cut me some slack.
Yeah, exactly.
No, they just get straight to business. Well, what about any academic tips that you have just to help kids be more organized? I know that that's definitely a struggle in our home.
It is. I think that what kids struggle with as far as organization, and, we get new teachers. I know we lost some great teachers, but I know we have some amazing ones coming in. And each teacher can utilize the Google Classroom differently.
Yes, I really noticed that last year.
So some people put their information in different places. And so I think you kind of need to know your teacher's personality. I have a lot of teachers that'll post it on the board. And so kids have to take pictures of that, putting it in their planner, noticing if there's any changes. Does your teacher put her assignments in the classwork section of Google Classroom? Do they put it in the stream section? Do they put it at the end of their notes? And so just knowing where your teacher puts critical information, I think is a huge deal. And it's hard. It's like a fire hydrant of information, but utilizing a planner, whatever one you want to use, and knowing your teacher and their style. And that takes a couple of weeks. They're not going to know automatically, oh, my teacher keeps putting this information here. Or you may have a teacher that moves around. They may put it in stream one time. They may write it on the board another time. So you're just really getting to know the way that teacher operates.
Yeah, no, that is so true. I really noticed that last year. Blake had, as a freshman, had one teacher that I would say was like the golden standard of how I would love to see everyone do it. Then he had the extreme opposite of one teacher that didn't post anything. So as a parent, I felt like I needed to kind of peek in on him to see what was going on. And it was just kind of hard because it was very inconsistent.
We have a Remind program at the program, and it's just signing up for reminders. And it's a free option. But what I find so interesting is sometimes I'll send out a reminder like, hey, don't forget you have a test on Friday. And parents will text me back, my child doesn't have a test on Friday. And I'm like, And really what it is one teacher is super up to date, posting all their information, and one of them may have been up to date but posted it at another location. And so kids are like, oh, I didn't know that. And they'll say, we don't have a test. And I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure you do.
Yeah, I have to say that your text reminders really saved us a lot last year. Those were so amazing to get. And thank you so much for doing that, because there was so many times that I wasn't aware that he had anything and he didn't know. And so you were breaking the news.
I'm like, hey, well, do you know, even with my 3 children who all graduated from Highland Park, I would say to one of my kids, hey, you don't forget you have that project due. And they're like, no, I don't. I'm like, oh my goodness. Yes, you do.
Yeah, you are very plugged in and you definitely have access to all the best dates. So thank you so much for doing that. I wanted to give a personal thank you to our good friend and show sponsor, Kathy L. Wall State Farm Agency. We have known Kathy for more than 15 years, and there is no person we trust more when it comes to insurance than Kathy L. Wall. Kathy is always available to help you find the right insurance for your family needs. Whether it's covering your home, auto, or providing a life insurance policy tailored to the unique needs of families in Highland Park. My family trusts Kathy with our insurance, and we hope you will too. Please visit kathylwall.com to learn more and let her know that Martha from the Bubble Lounge sent you. Well, as a parent, what kind of role can we play just getting them emotionally and structurally prepared to go back to school?
I think that the kids are under already a lot of stress.
Yes.
And there is no doubt about it. But I think, and parents will often say, oh, we have such high anxiety. My child's really anxious. But the antidote for that is action. It's not inaction. And so I think sometimes people just sit too long and just sit in that dread instead of taking steps.
Yeah.
Like
right.
If you've been struggling with reading, you need to do a reading review, which I always recommend for everybody, just because a lot of kids aren't reading with that in mind, like, oh, I'm about to be tested on this.
Yeah.
So if your student is struggling with, again, we've had math has not been our favorite, then it takes action to kind of reduce that anxiety. It's not inaction. And I think prep is probably, that's what takes away that feeling. Because I think sometimes kids go in, they get there, and they already feel like they're underwater. It's like they're dog paddling in the first few days. And that's a miserable feeling.
Yes.
I think that, and I know this is so cliche, they're not getting enough sleep.
Right. I agree. Mm-hmm.
They're not getting enough sleep. And you can really tell it in so many things that they do. And I don't need to give you a bazillion studies on how critical sleep is, but I would think if you can get your child sleeping, I also think that your children should be waking themselves up in high school and getting themselves out the door. And it shouldn't be mom or dad's job, like 5 more minutes.
Okay,
if you're not doing that, I think that should be a big goal for next year.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because I started out the year saying, okay, I'm just, if he's up, he's up. If he's not,
right.
it's his problem. And then I caved in and
started
helping with the wake up process.
Of 100%. That's why we're here. We're parents. We're not going to go, well, we gave it our best shot. You're 15 and now you're on your own. So yes, if they're not, but I just think it's a goal we're working towards. Like, let's try to get ourselves up one day, okay, 2 day. I do think it's critical. I'm not going to mention any names, but I have friends that are still calling their kids in college.
Oh my goodness.
So we would like to be past that when our kids go to college.
We need to start weaning off now, guys.
Try it. Start it now.
Are you feeling stressed with all the things you're doing for your family? Then you need HelloNanny.com. Let's face it. Between shuttling your kids around to all their activities, trying to keep your home running efficiently, and preparing meals while also trying to pursue your career and social interests, it can be overwhelming. That's why we recommend you call our friends at HelloNanny.com. With over 20 years of experience, they make hiring a nanny simple and streamlined. Even better, they have a network of pre-vetted career nannies and do all the work for you, from scheduling interviews to coordinating trials to helping you extend an offer. It's a turnkey service that eliminates the stress of finding the right nanny. Remember, you don't have to do it all by yourself. Visit HelloNanny.com or call 844-266-2669 and let them eliminate the stress of hiring a nanny for you, just like they do for so many Park Cities families. Well, you and I were talking before we started recording just about how ACT and SAT has changed in recent years.
Wow, what a change is coming our way. As you know, it used to be super important, and then COVID came along,
right,
and it kind of dropped off the wayside. Like the year my daughter, she was a junior when that came, there were no places to even test.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And what a change it has been. And I cannot tell you that it is coming back with a vengeance.
Oh my gosh, what do you mean?
It is going to be critical for these kids to do well on that. When I've been reading and keeping up with this, obviously it's something I would pay attention to, but the colleges know, hey, this is not an ideal situation. We know it has its flaws. However, we need to start with something, and it's the one thing that they take a test by themselves. It's the one thing. So for essays kids are writing, many children have a lot of support and help doing that. We now have ChatGPT, AI, different things like that. But these tests are, you're going into a room and you are taking it by itself. Is it flawed? Of course. But they've determined it's pretty darn important. And so as sophomores, I always say, like the second semester, you should be taking a diagnostic test. Like, where am I fitting in? What's kind of best for me? And we do that. We have a diagnostic test that kind of just gives them a little bit direction, because I know you're like, I don't know what I should be preparing for. And then their junior year this year, you should really start getting started. Everyone will be taking the PSAT in October. Every single person.
Starting freshman year.
Well, junior year is when it's going to count. That's where you're a National Merit Scholar, that type of stuff. They will take it their freshman and sophomore year, but it's the junior year is when it counts. And what we're doing a little bit different this year is we're prepping. We're just doing a foundations course where it's ACT, SAT content with test-taking skills for the PSAT. Okay. So we haven't been doing that. Our kids have not been preparing for this. And it's for our juniors this year, it's really going to be critical. And I think sometimes it's misleading when you have a college that says, they're optional.
Test optional.
Optional. Mm-hmm. I think that is not true. Because the reality is if you have a great score, you're turning it in.
Sure.
And if you don't, you're not. So it kind of weeds itself out on who has good scores or not. And I would say that was probably one of the biggest regrets I had with my own kids is not starting early enough. Because sometimes you'll start later and you're cramming it all in versus kind of writing out this marathon, taking that information in. And I do think that was probably a mistake. Did my children still go to college? They did. Do two of them have jobs? They do. So it's not like it's life ending, but I think we could have made life a little bit easier. And I would say generally, I think that's where my point of even starting this business of the program is just how can I make life a little bit easier for everyone?
Yeah.
It's like if I had a fourth child. Like, what would I do different?
That's so funny. Yeah, there's so many times that I wish I could have a do-over too. So, that's a good way to put it. Well, we were talking earlier about parents kind of weaning off as far as waking up the kids and letting the kids be more accountable for things. And I know that starting in high school, you hear this word constantly. They need to self-advocate. That's
Absolutely.
Like such a key word. How do we get our kids to do that? Because some are shy and don't really want to draw attention to the fact that they're not understanding something or they're getting behind, but it's so crucial.
It really is. I think that you do have to prod them a little bit on that. And I would even say give them the words and the structure to go in there because, they're 15, a lot of them, 16. They don't know how to always articulate what the problem is. And, a lot of times parents will say, okay, go to tutorials. And kids do. And that teacher says, so what's your question? And they're like, I don't know. My mom made me come. And so, it's kind of, as a teacher, it's kind of hard to start with. Sure. So I think you should give your children and your students kind of the platform, like let's kind of role play a little bit. Like your teacher's going to say this and help them write it down. I've always been a big advocate when you are communicating with teachers, coaches, counselors, adults. I've always wanted to be CC'd. My husband, both of us CC'd on those emails because it helps the kids. Like, it helps the teachers know, wow, this family is all in on this. Like, everyone is waiting for an answer. And I know even, it's so important even through the collegiate level that they do that. My daughter was taking an online course, math course, and she got a poor grade, and she immediately, emailed her professor back and said, listen, I know math. I need you to regrade this. Because she was pretty confident in her knowledge, and he did. And sure enough, there were mistakes made.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely.
Good for her.
Well, she is my child. She's only heard this a few times. But it's not just a skill set you're learning for this year. It goes all the way through college. But I do think kids need a little bit of prompting, like given some words to say or some phrases that will help them advocate. And it is. I have one child that would, go right in there and raise their hand and say, I don't get this. And then my others needed a little more prodding. And it is amazing kind of giving them that guidance, kind of where it puts them for the collegiate level.
Yeah, I think that's really good, what you said about role playing, because that just gets them mentally prepared of what the teacher may say and just how the conversation might go.
It really does. And I think they just don't know where to start. Like, I'm having trouble and I also think that, for kids that are in honors classes, being able to negotiate that and knowing when this is not a fit for me. And not because of academics. They may be playing football, volleyball, bells, cheerleading. And so their schedule really isn't allowing for them to devote that much time.
Right.
So should I level down? So that's a conversation you have with your teacher. Like, I'm struggling. Should I level down to an on-level class? And I think probably one of the saddest things I see is when I have kids that have they didn't start advocating, they didn't tell their parents.
Right.
And now we're sitting at a pretty low grade, and it's kind of hard to remedy. But no matter what, your child is going to college.
Well, on that note, what is kind of the time frame that you need to make that change? I forget how many weeks into it.
So it's 3 weeks, 6 weeks in the semester. Now, given that information, they could change it this year. They could say, we're going to do 6 weeks and 9 weeks. So, it's just important to stay up to date. The teachers, the counselors will usually put out that information like, okay, if you're planning to level down. I know this year is probably one of the biggest changes in leveling down. So for some of my kids that are in APES, which is the AP Environmental Science, once you're in, you're in. There is no leveling down because there's no place to level down to.
Okay.
And so same thing with human geography. Apparently, there were so many changes last year, so many changes that they really just kind of put a little kibosh on that. And you need to, once you're in, you're in.
Okay.
Now, for these freshmen, if they're in honors biology, and they're doing poorly, they can level down. But as you may not know, there's always some consequences when you level down. And that is your schedule can change.
Yes, it can. Yeah, you'll have to rework your whole schedule in some cases.
And sometimes because it is a popular class, you can just transition right. They'll have another class right, on an on level at the same period. But sometimes they can't.
Right.
And more than messing up your schedule, do you know what it messes up? Your lunch.
Yes.
The most important day of the
time of the day.
Time of the day.
Yes.
And so sometimes kids aren't prepared for that.
Okay.
But you don't want to see on your report card if possible.
Right.
If possible.
Well, we love telling stories on the Bubble Lounge, and I wanted to see if you have any success stories of maybe a kid that got a slow start their freshman year. They weren't quite in the right headspace and didn't start off with the best of grades, but then ended up strong and went to an amazing college and has had a wonderful future.
Well, I will give you a little slow start, and I don't know if it's a slow start, but I can give you an example of my own children. So my oldest son, all three of my children went to A&M.
Okay.
And my first one just got into A&M outright.
Uh-huh.
My second son did not get into A&M outright.
Okay.
He got offered the blend team.
Oh, yes.
And so, at first we're like, oh gosh, you're a little disappointed in that, but he took it. And so he went off and he did fine. And we laughed because my older son did the business school at A&M and my second son said, I'm going to do the business school too. And I knew it was going to be difficult for him to go from blend to the business school. It's a very small number that get to do that. But he developed such strong study skills doing blend team that he ended up graduating magna cum laude.
Oh, wow.
And my older one did not. So I think sometimes you're thinking, oh, I didn't get this or we didn't get that. And it really can be amazing differences in just that level of maturity.
Right.
And I think there's room for that. And that's why when people, get upset, I'm like, you're going to college. And I think through tutoring, what I always want to emphasize is I just want to give you options. You're going to college. I just want when you to finish for you to have options. Options are fun, right? You don't want to go to the restaurant and just have a hamburger choice. So when you kind of open up that, it's nice to have options. But no matter where they go, they can do amazing. But it was a kind of a cute thing that my second one ended up surpassing his older brother.
Yeah, that's a really good story. I love it. Well, Lori, we've covered a lot today, and I appreciate everything that you have shared with us. I think you're doing a great job of helping us get ready to get back in the swing of things. Do you have a checklist that you can go through with us?
So if I were a new parent or just a parent in the secondary level, these are things that I would kind of be thinking about. Am I doing a summer prep for some of my weakest links? If it's the honors chemistry, bio, math. Of course, I recommend reading for everybody because sometimes we don't read like we should. Do we have, is there any area that we were like, oh, I need a weekly group for something, like just my weakest link? And I don't think you need it for every subject, by the way. Am I on my reminds? I know okay, I'm getting remind information. And as you said, you use that as well. It's super beneficial for parents. One thing we do are supply bags for the year. And if you're a parent and you haven't been to Office Depot the first week of school, you really start to appreciate the supply bags. I do a really limited number, but I do try to do it for my clients just so they're not inundated.
I have taken advantage of that many times, and it is a lifesaver. I want no part of that crazy first day of school shopping.
I know. It can make you cry, and I mean the mother. Just being ready for that. So you've got your summer reading. At least you've made a plan if you haven't started. Look and see how many pages you have. Kind of narrow that down, how I'm going to work that out. I'm preparing for my weakest area. I'm ordering my supplies, and that's a year's worth of supplies, by the way. I don't want anyone to ever go to Office Depot because I cried there one time. And just getting ready for the ACT, SAT, and the PSAT. That's in October, and our reviews start for that August 17th.
Oh, wow. That is coming up.
So fast, but it's all manageable. It's all manageable. And just being proactive and not sitting while the ship is going down sometimes.
Right.
It's movement. It's action to remedy any of that.
All right. Well, I think we're ready for back to school.
I'm ready.
Well, how can people find you?
We are on, I have Instagram, but for my website, it's lori@thehpprogram.com. And there's a ton of information on there. And I am a huge sucker. If you call me, I'll answer. And I really answer any questions all day long. My feeling of having a parent go through and just feeling anxiety, I don't want that. I felt it. And I just really try to be a source of information. So if you're anxious about something, Call me. I will answer your questions.
Good to know. You're going to get a lot of phone calls.
Give it to me.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. I can't thank you enough for everything that you've shared with us.
I was so excited, and I hope it makes a difference for a lot of kids and parents.
Absolutely. Well, that's been another episode of the Bubble Lounge. I'm Martha Jackson, and I'll catch you next time.